Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit, and always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. I want to give a shout out to HLTH Code, my sponsor for this podcast. They're an amazing company. They're great people. GetHealth.com, GetHLTH.com. They're a mainstay for me in my treatment of patients. I'm using them for my seniors, getting them off all the seed oils and garbage stuff and getting them healthier with HLTH Code. Great flavors, vanilla and chocolate macadamia. They actually converted me over to chocolate macadamia. I really love that stuff. Really good stuff, great nutrition. And I'll tell you, behind the scenes, they're a great company. They're sending me samples of a new product coming out that I can't really talk about yet, but it helps improve insulin sensitivity. I'm going to have some anecdotal data from Guatemala when we try HLTH Code, which I've seen improvements in patients, and give them some additional supplementation. And I'll have some information on that when I get back. But for now, everyone, enjoy your February. And again, thank you for your continued support. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today I have a good one. This is something that is near and dear to my heart. I think guys, everyone, we got to try, do the workout that you enjoy or the exercise that you enjoy, and do it for fun and enjoy yourself, and maybe push your limits a little bit more than you're used to. So I have a real life dietitian, registered dietitian, and certified personal trainer who's going to help us today. Kayla Girgen, welcome.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And now I have to ask you about your book. It's called RUCK FIT. That's a play on words, isn't it?
It is. I think everything, wherever you can put the F word, you can put ruck, and it makes it really fun.
Yeah. So we could have a lot of fun today. Yeah, because you say ruck around and find out too.
You're
right?
Gonna have to click the explicit button for this.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. So I'm so glad finally we have a resource where people can put it together. I was surprised, actually. I don't know if you know Mark Sisson or have heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's talking about rucking a lot now too. Instead of saying, hey, you're running and you put so much damage on your body, he said, now I just ruck. And he said, I'm not getting injured. I'm having fun putting on muscle mass. So for people who have been under a rock for the last 5 or 10 years, tell people what rucking is.
Rucking is simply just walking with weight or moving with weight. So I think nowadays we think of rucking as like wearing a backpack, you've got some weight in it. Weighted vests have become really popular too. So I feel like we see those reels of, you're in a good neighborhood when your neighbors are walking around with their, weighted vests or rucks. And historically, rucking has come from the military. So I think for like the average person, it was maybe a little bit intimidating. But my goal with the book was just to break it down and help it be more approachable, because I think you really can get the best of both worlds, strength and endurance, but it doesn't have to be hard. We always like to overcomplicate everything, and simply walking with weight, you can get a ton of benefits.
Aaron, remember the old days? They used to wear like ankle weights, like 5-pound ankle weights. People would have those on, runners and people. I don't see that anymore, but I see mostly, a lot of people rucking, especially when I'm out hiking in Prescott, Arizona. It's amazing how many people are doing it,
Yeah, my folks were actually just in Florida. They were snowbirds, and they were talking about, there was this couple, they would walk with one dumbbell. So they would walk for, a dumbbell in one hand, then they'd switch hands, and then they'd trade off, and then they were doing all kinds of things. But compared to having it on your body too, like having your like weight on your ankles or your hands, that can change your gait a lot of times too, which I think we underestimate. So that can put you, I would say, at more risk for injury compared to something like a ruck.
Yeah, especially if you're doing one way. Like if you're doing two, I can see that. Like one, you're gonna throw yourself off
Right.
kilter a little bit.
And
And
your
your
spine is kind
chiropractor,
of, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Your chiropractor, that's good,
We'll say, what the heck are you doing?
yeah.
Yeah. So the rucking, that's what's one. Oh, tell me your story. Like, let's go back. Like, how did you get
Yeah.
into what you're doing now? Like, growing up, were you always fit, healthy, or did you struggle? Tell me your story.
Yeah, I would say like growing up, I always watched, I think, myself and family members, like, you go through those awkward kid stages. And like I clearly remember being in the boys husky section, like almost in tears, just in grade
Yeah.
school when you're very vulnerable. But I think a lot of that kind of followed me into adulthood. I found myself just struggling with all or nothing thinking, like whether it was food or whether it was fitness. And it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. So eventually I, started getting my personal training certification to kind of pivot out of the sales and corporate world. And while I was studying for that, that's where I found out what a registered dietitian was, when you're reading about the different scopes of practice, what you can and can't do. And I was like, I want to do that. And this was before we had social media to, do all of our research. So I was looking into it, looking at like bodybuilding.com and Health and Fitness Magazine, which still probably weren't the best sources for nutrition information. But eventually I went back to school to get my RD. And much like a physician, you have your residency. Dietitians have their internship. So we get our clinical supervised hours, and we're thrown into all of these rotations too. So you're in GI one day and cardiovascular and weight management. And I was lucky enough to go to the Mayo Clinic, and every day I was leaving with my little post-it note of all of these rare disorders. Like, oh my gosh, this was, super rare, but I was able to see things like that. But even outside of getting my degree, doing my internship at Mayo, like when it came to nutrition, like the math wasn't mathing. It's like, okay, I'm doing all of the things I should do as a dietitian. I'm giving people low calorie meal plans and low fat and low sodium. And I was like, something's got to give. Like it wasn't working for me. It wasn't working for my patients. And then when I went down this kind of metabolic health journey and, learning more about blood sugar balance and bringing CGMs into my practice and using it myself, that's where I think things just really started to click.
It's wild, because we kind of have a similar journey. I struggled with weight my entire life. My whole mom's side of the family decimated with diabetes. I'm getting pre-diabetic. I'm eating the ADA's recommended diet, getting worse. I was like, what is wrong? I'm working out 6 days a week. This is crazy. My wife eats whatever she wants and she's skinny. I'm like, wait a minute.
It's
This
not
is like,
fair.
it's just not right, And we start learning about this metabolic health stuff, and it's critically important. And I would see my patients. You put them on insulin, they gain 20 pounds. You go, you got to watch your diet. They gain 20 more pounds. They're like, I'm watching my diet, doctor, but insulin makes you fat, right? So when you see like that was a key word to me when you said, I'm watching my patients. I'm doing what we're supposed to be doing, and I'm watching my patients get worse. And you think something's wrong here. And like, how do all of our colleagues around us not see that and go, wait a minute, this isn't working. This isn't
Right.
working. But that's the guideline. You just do what it says on the paper, right?
Yeah, I was actually just cleaning out a closet and I came across a box of all of my old notes, and a lot of that was resources that we were handing out. One I came across and I was like, I just want to go back to all of my old
Yeah.
patients and apologize,
Yeah.
because it was in all of my, resources for people with diabetes. And here is a handout I was giving patients and circling going, okay, eat your 6 to 11 servings of whole grains a day. Very little talk about, things like protein or incorporating healthy fats and fiber. And yeah, I feel like everything that I'm doing now is almost completely opposite to a lot of the things that I was taught.
So do you think, I mean, that's the hard thing. We're taught one thing. I remember telling people, if you skip breakfast, you're going to die. You go into starvation mode. I'm looking at all these thin people that skip breakfast all the time. I'm like, well, they seem to be doing okay. So, this intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, there's so many different things that have come up since we were trained. And I was trained a lot long before you, and we got zero nutritional training, right? In medical school. Like they said, well, just eat low fat and don't get your arteries blocked, and that's about it. And so, when you have doctors giving advice, and I would notice when I sent my diabetics to diabetes education, they would do worse. So I had the fortune actually of taking care of the head diabetes educator from two different hospitals in San Diego when I was there. And I had told both of them, let's put a CG. And when CGMs were new, then I go, let's put one on for a week. And you eat your regular diet and then eat low carb and see what happens. And they were both blown away. They're like, what do I do now?
It's
When you see
wild.
it,
And these were
it's wild.
diabetes doctors that had never worn a CGM themselves.
No, these were diabetes educators in the
Oh,
hospital.
okay.
They were the head diabetes educators. And when they saw it, they called me and they go, what do I do now? Because everything I've been telling people, they see it now,
It's
these
like
big
identity
excursions.
crisis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an identity crisis. You go, what do I do? Like you said, if you get people 6 meals a day with a bunch of carbohydrates with each meal, their sugars are going up and down. They're like, they stabilize the sugars, but they stabilize it way high. Right.
Right.
And you go, well, why are you doing that if they're shooting insulin and they have to shoot more insulin for all this processed food you're giving them? It's just wild.
And I think too, like with CGM, I think even outside of diet, a lot of things start to surface. Like, okay, how one bad night of sleep or how stress can show up. So I love seeing that too, because those are always factors that I think are hard to intervene on. You can count carbs, you can count calories,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't always count your stress or like the quality of your sleep. But on a CGM, it becomes very apparent what your root causes are.
Yeah, I've had it. I'm like, hey, what'd you eat at 2 o'clock yesterday? They're like, oh, I was arguing with my husband about something,
Yeah.
like, that's embarrassing. But yeah, my sugars went up because it's a stress response, cortisol, all these things we start seeing. You're right. It's not just about the diet, but the one thing is exercise can mitigate a lot of that.
Yeah, and I would say for me, like my journey to be a dietitian was certainly not linear. And then I discovered rucking, I would say later. So movement, really has been a big piece for me. Working in healthcare like mid-pandemic, I ended up I had my first panic attack, which I didn't realize at the time, but having my follow-up with my doctor, we were going through all my Holter monitor results. It's like everything looks great, we're going to start you on Prozac. They didn't ask about my diet. They didn't ask about
Wow.
movement. They didn't ask me, how I was coping with stress. And I was reluctant, but I did it. And, then I just kind of was flipped from one end of the spectrum to the other. Essentially, I went from, feeling everything to just this emotional flattening. I lost my creative edge. And that's when I realized I
Wow.
was like, okay, I know where I need to improve. I need to move more. I need to drink less. And then eventually was able to kind of taper off. And that's where I really discovered rucking. Like that was my nature's medicine. I would
Yeah.
say
How
I
did you
was
figure
able
it out?
to.
How did you go, I'm going to try wrecking? That looks interesting.
I
Like, what
actually
was,
I learned about it on a podcast. So much like
wow.
this, I was listening to a podcast and I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool. I can just throw a backpack on with some weight. I can get out and go for a walk and I can, build muscle, burn fat, build bone density, check all of those boxes. But I think what I really underestimated was that emotional benefit, just getting outside more and getting out of my head.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a perfect storm when people were locked down. You're stressed. You can't go to the gym. You can't hang out with people. You can't go to church or your social functions. It was like you go shopping, go home. That was it. And I saw the devastating effect, especially on our seniors, because I had people that were in a not a assisted living or a senior living type situation, and a lot of them didn't see a face for like 6 months. Like they would knock on their door and say, "Okay, wait 10 seconds, come out, get your food, and get back inside." No socialization, no games, no bingo, no cards, no engaging with people. And then when they did see someone, everyone's wearing a mask, and if you're hard of hearing, it was a disaster. So a lot of people started declining mentally. They started having more anxiety and stress, and people who are really like someone like you take care of yourself, you're doing the right stuff, and you start getting panic attacks, and you go, "Oh my gosh!" And alcohol was the other factor. A lot of people were drinking because they go, "What's the use? I'm just sitting at home. What do I do? And let me get open a
Right. You
bottle
can
of
have
wine or
somebody drop
something."
it off right at your doorstep and
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So, and I
So
think
it's
even
amazing. Like it tells you something though that the first response is, "Hey, you need Prozac. You have one panic attack. It's not like you're depressed and anxious all." And you go, "Huh? What else could be going on in life? Like the stressors that you're under."
and there was no talk about diet, lifestyle, like nothing came up on that. So that was me kind of, putting my dietitian hat on. I was like, I feel like my nutrition's pretty good, but I think the more I've learned about like metabolic health and just learning about the impact of movement and muscle and how crucial that is, especially long term. And like you were saying, like people who are aging, it's like holding on to that muscle with age and how important that is for so many different processes.
It's huge. I mean, a lot of us don't recognize the importance of muscle mass. The more muscle mass you have, the longer you live. The studies are there. And so, from a metabolic standpoint, if you have no muscle mass, where are you going to put that extra carbohydrate you're eating? You have nowhere to put it. So, these big muscle guys will walk around and go, "I eat carbs all day and I'm fine." Well, it's all going to your muscle and you're working out 3 hours a day. The accountant who's 350 pounds and diabetic doesn't have that luxury.
Right. And like you said, even like quality of life, even being able to move, like regardless of age, when you're able to not live life on the sidelines. I think that makes a tremendous difference. You're going on vacation or you're able to retire and do all of the trips that you want because, typically we've hit our peak, physical physique by then, and to be able to do that long term and do all the things that you want to do.
Yeah, it's so important as we get older. Like one of the biggest indicators of longevity is being able to stand out of a chair by yourself without needing assistance. Of going to hospice versus going home after you get your sickness, whatever you're in the hospital for. And we have data on that too.
That's
So
wild.
maintaining your strength. And I think the other big thing is all of us go, okay, January 1st, that's it. We're gonna get in shape. And you go run other and you pull your hamstring, your Achilles acts up, and you're like, oh gosh, I gotta take a month off. Then you're out of and then you go forget it. I'll start next year. But doing something like rucking, you could do a stage rise approach. And the other thing that's really important with rucking is, and we see it all the time when we're doing medical weight loss or trying to manage diabetes, we lose a certain amount of weight and then your metabolic rate drops because you're not carrying all that extra 20 pounds. So why not put those 20 pounds on us and be like you were 20 pounds ago, right?
Exactly. And I would say I've worked in a lot of like bariatric surgery centers too. And even like you had said, usually when you're weight loss or when you're losing weight, your metabolic rate goes down, but also bone density with drastic weight loss. And rucking can help offset that. So you're basically stimulating that muscle. You're also getting that added stimulus because a calcium supplement alone is not going to help you build any sort of bone density. And then you get to preserve that muscle and burn fat. So you really get the best of both worlds. And then circling back to the beginning, you had mentioned runners. And I feel like a lot of runners who feel like maybe their joints aren't, holding up to running, they love doing it. Rucking is a great alternative because it's low impact and thinking about, age again. Rucking is something where if you have a walking routine, you're just adding weight to it. It's low impact and you get a lot of the benefits without hammering on your joints too.
Yeah, especially if you have a partner or a spouse who's not as physically fit, maybe. So if you go, we're just walking the dogs around the neighborhood, you could just throw that ruck on and you're going to get more of a workout than the person without that extra weight on them, too.
What I love too is that if you have somebody that you want to work out with and you're like, oh, they're going to slow me down, you can just add more weight. So you still get a good workout. You might be going at a slower pace, but you can kind of ramp that weight up or down. And the social component is nice. I think you can ruck by yourselves. My husband and I started a ruck club, and that's been really fun just to see like all of these amazing people I've met through our ruck club. And you're able to, instead of going to the bar or something, you're going out for a ruck in the morning.
Yeah, I think it's so amazing. And rucking, there's a lot too. Some of these guys are doing, they're lifting the rucksack. They're doing different exercises with that ruck. So it's not like you just put it on and walk around all the time, right? There's other things you can do, especially in
Yes.
a club. They're doing some amazing stuff.
Yeah, it's like you can make a whole workout out of it. It's like you've got your ruck, that's your strength training buddy, your free weight. And I do include pictures in the book too, because I will say rucking's not a replacement for strength training. Sure, you get some of those benefits, but you still have to do, I would say, some sort of formal resistance training, but you can use your ruck and maybe you're putting it on and you're doing body weight squats or you're using it to press above your head. You can use that to activate muscles. So I recruited my husband as my male model, and we kind of go through step by step and show a lot how you can do like upper body movements, lower body, even like some stretching in there too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you don't have to, like, a lot of people hate going to the gym. And I think there's benefit just from being out in nature, right? You see the birds, you see the sun out, realize that it is not just being in your cubicle all day type thing. And so
But
there's benefits to that too.
huge. I think we know we have benefits just from being outside. We know we have benefits from working out, and then you mush those two together and you really get like compounded benefits on thinking about like green exercise if you're able to move outside. And like you said, just it's a mindfulness practice. I think you're listening to things, you're getting out of your head, you're listening to the birds, watching things turn over. Like I'm in Minnesota, so we get to see all of the seasons, and I feel like it helps me appreciate that too.
Keeps you warm too when it's cold outside.
Yes, you warm up a lot
Yeah,
faster, for
you
sure.
warm up fast too. Keeps your back warm at least, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like so when you started looking at data on Ruck, like what was it? What were the things that really impressed you? You go, wow, these there's information here. Like,
I think we're starting to see more for just civilians. So a lot of the research we have is on young, fit males in the military carrying crazy amounts of weight. So I think we're just starting to see some of the research on like quote unquote normal people, like what that looks like. There was actually one that came out, I believe it was spring of 25 on older adults that were on a weight loss plan. So basically they did like a low calorie like meta fast So if you're familiar with that, it's like a combination of shakes and like your lean and green or like low carb meals. So they did two groups, both were on the same diet, but one weight, or I should say one group actually was putting back the weight on a vest. So whatever they lost, they were wearing in the form of a weighted vest. And they found that those folks, like over the course of 2 years, preserved a lot more of their weight loss. What I thought was interesting is they both lost the same amount of muscle. So I was like, oh, like the ruck or the vest helped, retain some of that muscle, but it really helped, I think, solidify this, like, I don't know if you've heard of the gravastat theory. So even outside
No.
of like muscle, it is like your cells are sensing that gravitational pull.
Oh yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
they were able to hold on to bone density. They still lost a little bit of muscle, but there was something about their metabolism that I don't know if they have part two of this study, but there is still some sort of mystery there on how this, like, gravastat or how your cells are sensing that extra weight on their body. But I will say they did wear the vest for, I think, like 6 hours a day. So it wasn't just like going out for a walk, they were wearing it around the house as well, too.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did see that study, and that's actually very interesting because there's a lot of talk about that. I just had on William Davis, who wrote the book Wheat Belly, and it's interesting. He interviewed a lot of the people from Biggest Loser, and they worked out 3 hours a day. They lost significant weight, and when they went home, they worked out 3 hours a day and ate the same, and they gained all their weight back plus. And you go, wow. But it maybe it's that whole thing of that weight loss changes the body's perception, and then it keeps adding up to get back to that same gravastat level, right?
Exactly,
So had they
exactly. So
been
if you're
rucking, maybe that would change things a bit.
exactly. And this is where, like, even outside of a walk, I've had a lot of people wear it to, if they're push mowing their lawns or doing chores around the house, you can wear your ruck to do other things. And I feel like that does change your posture in a lot of ways. So when you have a vest on or a ruck, you're, bending down to pick something up, you're going to think a lot more about your form as well. So I would say you can wear it for more than just walks too.
And do you think it's better, like, for instance, if I'm going hiking with my wife's we're going to the mountains, I wear my ruck because I could put in my bear spray or my water for my dogs and all the other stuff. I just throw it in the backpack and have it, right? But if you're just doing stuff around the house, like if you're just working out, you could just put like on a 10-pound weight vest or 15-pound weight vest and not have a big rucksack when you're trying to, do squats or something.
Yeah, I would say there's certainly benefits to both. You're
Hmm.
probably with a ruck, like having the backpack or 100% of that weight on your back, you're going to get more posture benefit. So it helps pull back, like hunch
For
shoulders,
core
especially,
strengths.
yes, and core strength. So it kind of gives you something to lean into. That weight's like right along your spine versus a weighted vest. You kind of have that weight on your shoulders, or it's more distributed evenly front and back. So it's nice for older folks who might struggle with balance versus a ruck where you have all of that weight on your back. But then you would mention like storage capacity. I personally like a ruck because then you have the, extra compartment you can throw all your stuff in. But then again, like a weighted vest is a nice entry level option. But I will say you can't really scale up as easily. You have to buy a whole
Yeah.
new vest a lot of times. So a ruck, you can just swap out the weight plates and then it makes it, especially if you're a beginner, a lot easier to scale that weight up.
Yeah, and the weight plates are great because they're square, they fit and they slide in and out. So I've had time, I've done it before where I regretted it. We go on a hike and I go, oh gosh, it was hot and this is a hard hike. Like I wish I didn't have all the weight in there. I wish I so now if I'm going on this hike for a first time, I go, okay, I'm just gonna scale back and not have it like the exhausted where you have to rest. And I have another just while we're on that, because I remember at the time I'm thinking they have these little pulls that you can pull. What are those called? Where you can pull and just take some of the burden off your shoulders a little bit if you're resting for a minute.
Yeah, like the cinches, you can
Yeah,
have
cinches.
like,
Yeah,
yep, you can kind of cinch your shoulder straps. A lot of like ruck specific, does yours have like a weight belt or a shoulder strap?
it's like a backpack too, shoulder stack.
Okay.
It's Go Ruck is the brand.
Yep, I love Go Ruck because I know I got the like the hip belt. So basically you have something that's secured around your hips
Oh
so you can
yeah.
cinch. And I would
Oh
say
yeah.
that really helps because then you're kind of transferring some of that load to your lower body.
All
And
right.
that helps ramp up and make things more comfortable. So I would highly recommend a weight belt or the hip belt if you don't already have it. A lot of their like rucksacks will have the capability to loop that on there. But yeah,
Yeah,
the
and I
nice
think
thing is you can cinch. So if you want to like transfer some of that load, you can tighten up your sternum or your shoulder strap. If you want to loosen things up, give your shoulders a break, put it to lower body, then you can tighten up that hip belt. So you can adjust things a little bit more. But I would say the key is that you have that weight high and tight. So I see a lot of times where like maybe it's hitting your lower back. That's not great. You want it high and tight right between like your shoulder blades.
yeah, to get the best effects from that.
Mhm.
Now, I see people rucking and they're kind of like jogging or I mean, is that like that seems like it's more stress on your joints and would be kind of
I'm a big proponent of either run or ruck. Don't do both. I
yeah,
don't
okay.
know. That's just a personal stance because I feel like if you're, I do see a lot of people with bad form and then throwing weight on top of that, and it just like makes me cringe. I was like, the goal with rucking is to not be injured. It's low impact. You can kind of scale
Yeah.
that weight up. But I think once you start moving at a different pace, or if you really want to play with speed, you can do what's called a ruck shuffle. So you're keeping your feet
Yeah.
really close to the ground, but you're almost doing like this little, I don't know, a little shuffle. You're going
Yeah,
really
you're
short,
shuffling. You're
fast.
not like you're not lunging out and
Exactly.
stopping and going in, and so you're kind of shuffling along. Yeah.
Yes, and that will really ramp up your heart rate too, or incline. So even more than weight, you can find elevation. So I would imagine maybe this trail that you were on, like really feeling it. If there's a lot of elevation, that is even more so than weight, going to really
Yeah,
ramp
they were
things up.
steep switchbacks. I was like, oh gosh, you're looking up going, oh, this is gonna be fun. And it was hot too. So, when it's cool outside and nice, it makes it so much better. But it's cool that you can, if you just injured yourself or you have something going on, you can lighten up and so I'll ask you, you're the expert. Why am I saying it? If say someone's never rucked before, what would you suggest for them? Say, start out with a super lightweight or you start out medium weight? Like, what's the best way to get wrecking?
I would say most people start pretty comfortably with 10 pounds, like 10 to 15 pounds, maybe for women, 10 pounds for men. Maybe that looks like 10 to 20, depending on your fitness level. I
Mhm.
would say, again, like how you carry it matters. So if you have a specific rucksack, that's going to help you keep the weight high and tight. You can use just an old backpack that you've got around too. So that interior pocket, you can grab a couple textbooks, you can throw those in your backpack,
Yeah.
and now you're going for a ruck. So you can do it really inexpensively, or when you're ready you can always upgrade your gear. But you had mentioned a couple levers, so there's three big levers you can pull in terms of intensity. You've got weight, which is the most straightforward. You can add more weight, you can go longer distance, and you can change your elevation. But I would say try not to do like Brian and pull all three at once.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
learned that was a learning
one at a
experience. I'm like,
time.
forget it, man. My wife's like, seriously, you're tired again? I'm like, yeah, let me rest for a minute. Like, I hate that. I never have to do that. But I was like, okay, next time I go there, I know what weight I'm taking because I know the trail. So I would
Yes,
say if you're on your first time on a trail and it looks kind of, advanced, then
go light.
go light. And especially if you're
Hmm.
going a lot like what you're saying, I like too, because and it makes sense too. If you're going for a short little hike, like you only have half an hour, you go, okay, if I'm just walking around the neighborhood, maybe I'll use more weight on that walk than I would if I'm going for a 3 hour hike.
Exactly, and I love that variability. So usually shorter, I'll do heavier. If it's longer, then I'll scale back, especially if it's a new trail. But I think with anything, like it's good when you come back from a ruck and you're like, okay, I think I could do more weight next time. Like
Hmm.
leaving a little bit of fuel in that motivation tank. Because I see too many people go too heavy, too far, too fast. So if you're looking for a cap, if you've got your 10 or 15 pounds, maybe it's no more than a mile or two. Because, and I don't know if you experienced this when you started rucking, but sometimes it changes your posture and you might feel like a little crick in your shoulder, your hips feel tight. So it can just change your gait, which I think that alone can result in a little bit of soreness too.
Yeah, and I think also, it's kind of like having resistance when you're, like going up hills and hiking. So if you're going on a long hike, you're training for a long hike, you say, well, let me ruck with heavier weights, getting used to that. And then when you hike with that, like now, if I don't have the ruck and I go for a hike, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so easy. You really do feel a
You feel like
difference.
you're floating,
Yeah,
like
and
once you
especially
take it
right,
off.
especially when you take it off. Yeah, you're like, I feel great today. Yeah, for sure. So, and I think that's a metaphor or whatever we want to call it for like stress. You walk around with all this stress on your shoulders, and when you finally get that stress relief, you just feel that much lighter and better.
For sure, for sure. And well, and I would say too, it just mentally, you've got that like, physically and mentally, you're carrying that load. And then when you take it off, it's just like, A breath of fresh air. And when you're rucking, I feel like it gives you less opportunity to think about some of the stressors. So when you're walking, I feel like your mind can really ruminate, but when you're rucking, you're thinking more thoughtfully about your form. Maybe it's a little bit tougher than you want to, so
Hmm.
it gets you, I think, out of your head more so than walking. But with that said, I would say not every walk has to be a ruck. So I see a lot of times too where people, feel bad for just walking, and that's, great too, especially for mental health.
Yeah, let's talk about just specifically for osteoporosis prevention. We've seen heavier women, like very thin women are I see that way more in my clinic, that they're more likely to get osteoporosis. So how does rucking fit in for someone who's really thin but fit?
Yeah, this is I share one example of Julie from Florida in the book, and she had actually she had gotten a DEXA scan, showed that she had osteoporosis, and then her doctor essentially was telling her all the things she couldn't do, which she loved. So he told her no CrossFit, no HIIT workouts, like all of these things that just put her at too much risk for injury. She already had a walking routine, so essentially she just added weight. She started with, I believe, 10 pounds, kind of worked her way up. I believe by the end, maybe she was rucking with 25, 30 pounds or so. So I
Mhm.
will say, kind of going back to guidelines, like maybe no more than 25, 30% of your body weight for a cat. But, in her case, she was doing what we call progressive overload. So slowly increasing that weight over
Mhm.
time. And I mean, this took her probably over the course of a year. But that extra weight creates that stimulus because, much like your muscle, your body's always tearing down your bone and building it back up, but it's like, what stimulus are you giving your body to be able to build that bone density back up more dense? Essentially, if you're not giving it a stimulus, then that's where we end up with things. Nutrition's a big part of that. But in her case, she was, ramping things up with progressive overload. She went back a year later and her DEXA scan was beautiful. So I would say it is just like strength training. You have that weight bearing stimulus, but it's doing it thoughtfully over time as well and not ramping things up too quickly.
Yeah, and that's a huge point too. What you're talking about is ramping it up, especially if you have severe osteoporosis. You don't want to go out there and get a stress fracture, right? So
Exactly.
slowly allowing your body to adjust to that, and I've had patients do weight training. Like a friend of mine, Ben Bakikio, has a slow resistance training, and I've seen people reverse their osteoporosis just with that, and some dietary changes. And while we're on that topic, since we have a registered dietitian here, what are some nutritional advice you would give people who are struggling with osteopenia that's progressing to osteoporosis, or if they have osteoporosis?
My number
Are
one thing would be get your vitamin D checked. I see a lot of times where, women especially are supplementing with a calcium supplement, but their vitamin D is in the tank or they're just hanging on by
Mhm.
deficiency. And that was one of the reasons I left the clinic because I, saw people come back with a 31 for a vitamin D and they're like, I'm in the normal range. I'm like, you are just scooting by deficiency, but they weren't
Yeah,
deficient yet, so I couldn't say anything. But
yeah.
anyway, that's another story. But
Yeah, because I'm usually shooting between like 60 and 80 vitamin D3,
that's exactly
and
where I look for
and
it
so I
too.
see it all the time. People with osteoporosis, and they're like their vitamin D is 20, and they go, "Oh, you're good." It's like you're
Right?
not good.
Yeah,
It's not optimized.
exactly.
Yeah,
So that
and
would
it's incredible. Like just kind of like it's the same mindset, and it's incredible to me because I see a lot of people that are on like these medicines like bisphosphonates, but no one's ever talked to them about exercise or diet ever. Like they're like, what? Exercise can help this? No one's ever told you that?
right. Well, in a lot of cases, I think too, can't that build up like medication specific for bone density? Like the quality just isn't the same.
Yeah, you have thicker bones that fracture just as much a lot of times. And you go,
Ex-
yeah, you have to stress the bones. So if you're sitting around all day just taking this, it's just like anything. It's like guys say, well, I'm going to take a bunch of testosterone to build my muscle, but they don't exercise at all. And they're sitting there like, well, how come I'm not getting stronger? Well, you're not exercising. You got to, it takes two. You can take steroids and you're not going to put on muscle mass. And like those guys don't just shoot steroids and get big. They're working
you
out
need a
too.
stimulus.
Yeah, you
Right.
need a stimulus and you got to do this. You can't, because that's the other big concern we have now. They want to put GLP-1s in the water for people, and you go, you lose muscle mass. One of the worst things you can do long term is lose muscle mass. You do not want to do that. But my scale's better. Yeah, but you're gonna die sooner, right? So it's a it's really a problem when we can't figure in that muscle mass. As an example, I have a guy, he came to me on October 1st, a couple years ago. Sugar's out of control, 320 pounds. We work with him for 6 weeks. He goes from 320 pounds to 316 pounds, right? 4 pounds of weight loss in 6 weeks. And I'm like apologizing to him. I go, this is crazy. But in the same time, he normalized his sugar. He came off his insulin, came off all his diabetes meds, his blood pressure normalized. And he said, Doc, my clothes are falling off. I'm like, well, it can't be with 4 pounds of weight loss. And he goes, well, it is. And his wife goes, I used to not be able to hug him around the waist and touch my fingers. Now I can grab my wrist like this. So I know and so we measured him. He lost 11 inches off his waist with 4 pounds of weight loss.
Wow.
So in
Yeah.
effect, not in effect, what he was doing was he was losing visceral fat around his organs, putting on muscle mass. And so even though on the scale it didn't show, he was metabolically everything got better, all of his metabolic markers. So the scale may not be the best indicator. Like if you're putting
Hmm.
on muscle mass and losing visceral fat, that's a huge trade. That's a great trade.
Oh, and especially with visceral fat, I feel like that's a hard snowball to get rolling. Like it takes a little bit of time. It's slow progress, but once that snowball's rolling, man, it's like things do become a lot easier. It's just having, I think, that patience to know, like, okay, I'm chipping away, I'm bringing down inflammation. Like you said, all of the blood markers are getting better, and that's huge. Did you happen to do like a body composition or
We
DEXA?
did. We do. I have something called the Sika, and he lost. It was ridiculous, like 11 pounds of visceral fat, and he put on like
Wow.
yeah, but he put on like 8 pounds of muscle at the same time. So it was a 4 pound, 7 pounds of muscle or something, or it worked out the ratio, and I was like, oh my gosh, your metabolic markers changed dramatically. And it had bugged me. And there's a guy, Sean O'Mara, who's a doc, and I had reached out to him. He was doing CT scans of the abdomen. It was showing that as you lose visceral fat, so as you lose visceral fat, the snowman in there, as you lose that, you're able to put on muscle mass even without exercise, believe it or not, because visceral fat inhibits muscle mass. That's why as we get older, we get more visceral fat, less muscle mass, and then it's hard to get out of that because if you think like what you're saying, melting this the snowman or the snowball, it's that if you have a little flicker of flame to melt that big snowman, it's going to take forever. But if you have a flamethrower of muscle mass, it melts that visceral fat way down. And so you start realizing, wow, and I thought about it, was like everything our body does is to protect us. So we get diabetes. Well, I mean, we get fat so we don't get diabetes because that energy has to go somewhere. You get stored in the fat tissue or you get leave it in the bloodstream. And if you leave it in the bloodstream, you have diabetes. So that's the lesser of two evils is to gain weight. So I thought, why would our body inhibit muscle mass or inhibit visceral fat? And as I was thinking about it, I go, what do bears do? They get really fat. They put a bunch of visceral fat. They don't burn their muscles while they're sleeping. They're burning their visceral fat. So if they have a ton of muscle, it's inhibitory. Like you're gonna have to wake up in the middle of the winter to go out and kill something to eat. So muscle's a detriment. Chronic stress is the same thing. If you're chronically stressed, your body says, well, store fat because you're gonna need energy if life is so bad. So if you get
And
out
then it's,
rucking, it tells you,
yeah.
hey, there's still a world out there. There's still bees and birds flying around and animals that you can look at and squirrels like my dog chases.
Right. Well, and then stress is such a double whammy because you have a higher propensity to store fat, but then, now you're, detrimental for your muscle too in terms of that cortisol. And then, when it comes to nutrition, what do we want to eat when we're stressed? It's not like we want all the healthy things. It's like we want high calorie dense things to help, bring that blood sugar, back into balance if you're on that roller coaster a lot of times. So I feel like stress in a lot of ways can, yeah, be just
Yeah, and
wild
it
on
can
body
be,
comp.
and the thing I love about rucking, that just in how I'll give you an example of a patient I got consulted on. She's a doctor, a physician, lives in Texas, and I'm looking at her sugars, going, how many carbs do you eat? Her sugars were 350 every afternoon. It was 350, 400. I'm like, oh my gosh, this poor lady must be like 400 pounds and eat carbs all day. So we get on the Zoom, and I'm looking, and it's like you looking at me going, wait a minute, what the heck are you doing? Are you having an IV of sugar? I mean, it's crazy. But she was like, 100 pounds, all muscle. And I go, how many carbs do you eat? She goes, zero, none. I go, none? Because I don't need any carbs at all. Look at my sugars. How can I eat carbs when my sugars are that high? And I go, oh my gosh, how much do you work out? She goes, oh, I do CrossFit like 3 or 4 hours a day. I'm like, what? Seriously? Like super type A intense doctor, right? And I go, oh my gosh, you're killing yourself. You got to liberalize your carbs. She goes, are you kidding me? I go, no, I'm not kidding you. It's a cortisol response you're getting. So all this working out you're doing, you're raising your cortisol because your body's like, you have no body fat and no carbohydrates. All you can use is protein for energy. Your
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 stress bucket is just
your stress
overflowing.
bucket is totally overflowing. I
Hmm.
go, let's just try it. Let's add in some. You don't have to eat gummy bears. I'm just saying, go have some sweet
Have an
potatoes,
apple.
have an apple, have this. You can afford it. You weigh like 96 pounds. I mean, you're all muscle. And so I go cut back on this stressful exercise. Like for her, it would be perfect. Go ruck for half an hour, go for, do some weight bearing exercise. I go, look, do this slow exercise, relax a little bit, go look at the birds for a minute, go outside in nature. Her sugar's normalized in 3 days of adding carbs and
Wow.
cutting back on exercise. Because we get into like what you're saying, you get into this mindset where you need to restrict calories more, you need to exercise more, and then there's no benefit to you in the end,
More isn't
because
always better, for
yeah,
sure.
more isn't always
Mhm.
better, and it can cause damage. And especially if you say, I'm going to go run 20 miles a day, I'm doing, and then you get tendonitis and you can't do anything.
Oh, and those type A personalities too. It's just all or nothing. And I would imagine too, like in her case, she probably wasn't sleeping. She's probably
Oh, no, she's stressed. I mean, you got a cortisol surge. You're stressed all the time, tense, stressful job as a doctor. Then you're stressed out working out. You feel like you have to work out 3 or 4 hours a day to try to get the sugars down, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So she finally consulted me to say, what do I do? Like, how much more can I cut my carbs? Or you can't. You got to add them back in. So that's a good thing. Like we talked about before recording, it's like, okay, it's not a one size fits all. It's like what works for you ultimately, right?
exactly. It's as cliche as it is, the best diet is the one that you can stick to. And I think the
The
same
best
goes
exercise
for
is the one you'll stick to too and not get
exactly.
injured.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, what can you do and like repeat consistently and something that you look forward to doing for sure. Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's so important too. You have to enjoy what you're doing. If you hate cycling, one of the questions was, okay, if I'm going to be working out and I have a choice between cycling, running, and rucking, like, what do you think of, among those? Like, if we're comparing cycling to rucking, for instance, because I like to cycle also.
Yeah, I might be a little bit biased, but
Yeah, that's okay.
I would say compared to cycling, so rucking, you're going to have that weight bearing. So you do get more of that like bone stimulus, depending on, I would say, what your resistance is to when you're cycling. And
Yeah, and that's super. That's a really important point because one of the studies I saw, and I think we have multiple studies now, was that these high end cyclists, like the Tour de France guys, get osteoporosis at a remarkably higher rate than the general population.
right. Well, and you just think too, they don't have much like stimulus on the upper body as well. So, and I would say with something like rucking, you have that, I would say on you have the load on your bigger muscles. So your back, your glutes, your core, your legs. So you are working, I would say a lot of that kind of mid body. It's going to be the accessory, movements, just doing more arm specific things that can really help too. But I would say with cycling too, sometimes depending on your intensity, I think if it's really intense or if you're doing more like interval training, you can peter out pretty quickly, whereas rucking is more lower intensity. So I feel like a lot of times you can do it for a longer duration without completely taxing yourself. And I think for me personally, anything that's like hit training, that just spikes my appetite like crazy. I feel like I could, eat and undo all of the hard work I just did, but with rucking I get like more of that lower intensity, low impact. I can go longer, but I feel like my appetite just is a lot better managed too.
Yeah, I'm wondering with rucking, like, a lot of people will do like hill repeats, like they sprint up the hill and walk back. If you're rucking with a load, do you think you get that same like heart rate response? Like if you're hiking up a steep hill with a good amount of weight, just for short periods of time, I'm talking about like, 100 yards or something, like 200 yards, something like that.
For sure. And then whenever you go up, you have to come down. And I think there's benefit there too, just like your
Mhm.
appropriation and balance. Like a lot of times it's not like we're falling as we're going up something. It's usually, especially with older folks, it's like when you're going downstairs or something, that's where we struggle a little bit with balance. So I do think that the going downhill is just as important too, because that's probably going to, help with your balance and brain a lot more too versus going uphill. But I would say for sure, yeah, you can really like ramp up your heart rate if you're if you're going uphill.
Yeah, I mean that makes it like you're on the treadmill just walking and you put that grade on at the same speed. You're like, okay, I got to slow the speed down a little bit because it's definitely way more demanding.
Right.
So, and I think you're, the because sprinting is there's a lot of good data on sprinting, but I think as we get into our 60s and 70s and you got wear and tear and you're carrying extra weight, I mean it's you're way more likely to get injured.
Yeah, and I've just accepted too that I think my reverse bucket list is maybe I'll never run again, like by choice, and I'm totally okay with that because
Yeah,
I feel like for me, rucking is that thing where it's like cardio that doesn't suck. It's something that I look forward to. I'm just like I'm not built for running. So that's something that I'm totally fine with not doing again. But I understand that there's runners who love to run that maybe again can't, and rucking is
Yeah.
again a good alternative.
Well, and I noticed when I'm in California, I cycle in Coronado, which is really nice. There's a big trail there where you don't have to deal with cars and stuff. But I see people, and you could tell if someone's a natural runner or they're not, and you're just destroying your. I mean, you're going to be miserable. And someone who just glides by this naturally, they're just like a
Not
elk, you know.
sweating. They're nice and
Yeah, they're
tan.
just
You can
smiling. Like how many, I always laugh too because when you're cycling, you see people who are in their 80s and 90s, and they're just having a good old time laughing and riding, and they're flying on their bike, and you go, wow, that's such a you can have that longevity. You don't see a lot of 90-year-old runners, that are smiling at least. So
exactly.
yeah, it's the you have to enjoy it too. So that's what Mark Sisson when we were talking he said rucking is way better. And here's why. And I go, well, people just love running. They love that. He goes, they don't love it. They love talking about it afterwards. When you're running like that, you don't enjoy it. Trust me, I did it for years. It's not fun. And he's the interesting thing he's talking about. His new book is called Born to Walk instead of Born to Run. It's Born to Walk. And he was talking about the benefits. And a lot of people he's training for running marathons that want to run marathons that they can't beat the whole time. He gets them walking 90% of the time. And then they'll do a little bit of HIIT training, weight training, upper body training, a couple of days a week. And then they go and crush their marathon time, even though they're not running 30 miles every week or 40 miles or whatever they're, in their training sessions. And so they're blown away. They're like, I'm training less. And it really has to do with like what you're talking about being in this sustainable zone 2 training, which is not toxic to the mitochondria. A new study that I just saw yesterday talking about these really intense training for long periods of time really burn out the mitochondria. It's like, what are we trying to accomplish with metabolic health? You don't want your mitochondria to burn out. You want to have a more broad base. And there's a guy, Ignace San Milan, also, who's been talking about with his Tour de France guys. Most of their training is just having fun in the town, riding slow. And these guys are looking at their Strava going, these guys are we're going to crush these guys. And then they get in where they need to man and they could pull their mitochondria horses together and beat these guys who've been training super hard for a long time. So like you
Wow.
said, more is not necessarily better.
Yeah. Well, and I say with rucking, it's like perfect. When I look at my fitness data too, zone two, I would say almost all the time without even really thinking about it or trying too hard. So I feel like it's like really gets that sweet spot to build that cardiovascular base. And then, like you said, you can do a little bit more like uphill or intense if you want to, ramp up the intensity or do some of that interval training too.
Yeah, and that's great. That's great too. Because I remember my friend who's along, he goes, Brian, just do zone 2 training. I'm like, zone 2 training like on a treadmill is like super hard because your heart rate goes up faster. So as you get in better shape, but at the beginning, you're like, oh my gosh, this is not going to do anything. But if you're doing rucking and you get to zone 2, right, and maintain that, that's really
And you don't have to think
beneficial.
about it, right? Because otherwise, like you're there, you're distracted trying to stay within this certain zone, and you're going too slow or you're going too fast.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can really be hard to find that sweet spot. But like you said, it does change too, which is a good thing. Like as you get stronger, build more endurance. It's like what you did for zone two 6 months ago is going to be, your new zone two is going to be a lot more difficult in comparison to.
Yeah, you're gonna put out more effort to get to that zone because you're in better cardiovascular shape. And I would think that for athletes that doing the rucking would translate into better times if you're running or you're cycling or you're swimming, whatever. You have that mitochondrial density that helps you to perform better.
Right. Well, and then like we were saying, once that ruck comes off, it feels like you can just fly. Like when you don't have your ruck on.
It's just like anything. If you're jogging on the treadmill and you put that grade on, you go down to your normal grade, you go, oh, this is so easy
You
now.
feel like you're going
Yeah,
downhill,
you feel like
right?
this is easy, like this is great, but having that extra, just that extra burden on is definitely good. And so, is there an optimal amount of rucking we should do in a week? Like, depending on fitness level, obviously, but someone who's just starting out, what should they shoot for? And from they're sitting on the couch watching Oprah. Now what?
I would say if you're new to rucking, maybe it looks like 2 to 3 days a week. I certainly think it depends on somebody's goals. So are you rucking to like get that bone density, strength, and cardio benefit? Or is it something where you're using it primarily for cardiovascular exercise, like we were talking the zone two? Because I think it's going to depend a little bit on your goals. That's probably going to, determine what weight you're doing, what the duration is too. For me, like rucking is my cardio. That is, primarily doing that and then some strength training on the side. But I will
Mhm.
say that in terms of like what it looks like for beginners, trying not to go, every single day, because then you again put yourself at risk for injury. So maybe that looks like 2 to 3 days a week. Ideally, you're giving yourself some sort of like maybe rest day, or doing some other exercise in between. And then that eventually might look like, staying at 2 to 3 days a week, or, up to almost every day. I certainly think as long as you're not rucking hard every day, it's something that you can make part of your routine. Or like you said, if you're taking the dogs out for a walk, like you're probably doing that on, 6 to 7 days a week. And rucking is something where you can easily add to that. Just don't ruck hard every day is, I guess, my message there.
Yeah, you don't have that balance in life. One day you may go for 20 minutes, the next day maybe Saturday you go for a 3 hour run, and maybe change the weight
Mhm.
up if you're going to be out there going up hills. Learn from my experience. Trust me on that one. That was not fun that day.
Yeah, yeah, and I see a lot of people get stuck rucking with the same weight, so a lot of times, like, for men, they're going into it too hard, and then for women, I'm like, "Okay, you've been, using the same 10 pounds for 6 months now. I think it's time to ramp some things
Yeah,
up."
yeah, ramp it up a
So,
bit and be a little
variety's good.
uncomfortable to put that stress on the body because the stress is what's going to help you out. As
Exactly,
long as you don't
exactly.
overdo it and make yourself miserable. Go, I'm not doing that again ever. You know.
Right, so it's
Yeah.
kinda finding that sweet spot, for sure.
How about in your experience as a trainer and dietitian? How about as far as like things like rebounding for people who may be just starting out, doing rebounder exercises, or are there other options for people to build their way up to where they can ruck?
Yeah, and I would say it depends where you're at. Like some people, I think just maybe aren't even walking. So maybe that looks like just walking to begin with. If you're really eager, maybe that's extra lightweight, like maybe 5 pounds, or just getting used to having some of those mechanics. Because,
Mhm.
if you haven't walked, or if you're just, like you said, sitting on the couch watching Oprah, like a walk's gonna feel like a workout. So once you have some miles under your feet, then you can start to add more weight. But I would say again, progressive overload, like you're adding a little bit at a time to get that to that point. And, maybe you never make it up to that upper threshold of say 25-30% of your body weight. That's still something I'm working on, but, maybe interspersing some of these heavier days, but not trying to do it heavy every day, or playing with distance and other variables. So this is why I love rucking, because it's like you can pull different levers to get that intensity that you want. You can do it by yourself, you can do it with other people. So I think you can really make it what you want, and make it an exercise that you look forward to coming back to.
Yeah, and if you're embarrassed going outside wearing a ruck or these weighted vests, you can clean your house wearing a weighted vest. You can vacuum. There's things you can do where you don't have to be out. Like if you're in an office by yourself and there's no one there, you can put on a weights and stand while you're doing your
I
interviews
keep my
or
weight vest right next to my walking pad, but your neighbors
oh
will
yeah.
get used to it. I've even gotten like some of my neighbors are rucking now, and now if they catch me without my ruck, they're like, "You don't have your pack on today." So
Yeah, what are
you
you
might
doing?
have
Yeah.
some good accountability buddies that
Yeah, yeah.
way.
No, that's true, huh? You get so used to it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And my
But I
dogs, when
would,
I put it on, they get excited because they know where they're going. They're like, yes, love the ruck. That
right.
means we're
Yeah.
going for a hike.
Do they know the
Yeah.
word? Like I know dogs usually know the word walk. Do they know
Walk is like you can't say walk
go
around here.
wild?
They
But
even
is
know, it's crazy. They know. Like if I'm going cycling that day, I put on my cycling stuff. They smell it and they go, ah, they go and lay down. They know it's crazy, but they smell the hiking clothes. I don't know how they know. They smell it and then they go, oh yeah, we're going hiking. They get excited. They're running around. They know it's coming. It's like it's just amazing. I don't get it, but
I feel like for dogs, like ruck is going to be the new walk. Like you can't say ruck. We have to
Mhm.
spell it out or do something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
awesome. So I got to ask you, what's life's best medicine for you? Like, where do you go when things are hard? Like when you were having your panic attacks, anxiety, like what's life's best medicine for you?
As based on today's conversation, it might be a little bit obvious, but I feel like rucking is certainly my medicine. It's something that, I was able to kick a medication for, literally, to be able to do something like rucking, just to get me out of my head and into nature. So undoubtedly, rucking is my medicine.
Awesome. And tell everyone about your book, when it's going to be available, how they can get it.
Yes, RUCK FIT, it is out wherever books are sold.
All
So
right.
Barnes& and Noble, Amazon, it was released earlier this year. But if you're looking for something that's just approachable and scalable, my goal with the book was just to help bring this to somebody who, maybe if you're familiar with rucking or were a little bit intimidated by seeing people army crawling through the mud, like this was something where I wanted to show people how, they could meet themselves where they're at and do this simple activity and really be able to see both the physical, but then also the mental gains. And then as a dietitian, I had to talk a little bit about nutrition and then mindset in there as well to kind of wrap everything together.
Yeah, awesome. And also, I just have to ask you, are you seeing patients like if I have a patient who's concerned about osteoporosis, just yesterday they go, I need, so funny how life is. But they go, I need a nutritionist to talk about osteoporosis prevention. I was like, I don't know if there's anyone who's I really trust that knows this stuff. Is that something you do
I do.
also?
Yes. And
Awesome.
I use CGM a lot of times in my practice too. So for anyone that's, new to maybe CGM, I know that that can be very intimidating to use a glucose monitor and like now you've got all this data but you don't know what to do with it, and that's where I really love to dig in. But osteoporosis, blood sugar management, yes, I'm your gal.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome stuff because I use a lot of CGMs and it takes a lot of education. And that's one thing I've heard them say, well, every doctor should be using CGMs. Well, if they don't know how to read it, it's very dangerous because they're going to go, hey, your sugars go up at 2 o'clock. Oh, we need to shoot you more insulin. You need a drug for that. So it's just like you have an anxiety attack. You need a drug for that. So I say, well, how about you go rucking and hiking and go out and enjoy nature? I see it dramatic. As a matter of fact, one of my good friends, he's a triathlete and he works out at a high level. And whenever I call over there, his wife goes, "Oh, he's working out right now." And I go, "Hey, man, why do you work out so much? Is it like you want to break all the records? I mean, you're getting older. Like, what's the deal?" And he goes, "It's my medicine. If I don't work out, I'm stressed, anxious, depressed. I get bitter and angry." He's the nicest guy I know. And his wife goes, "Seriously?" He'll get home from work and she'll look at him and say, "Go for a run. Go for a run." I could tell you have a bad attitude. And he's the nicest guy. I'm like, yeah, but he goes, it's true though. He goes, all my family's on drugs and medicines that calm their nervous system. He goes, this is my drug, really. I love to go. Actually, I love it. I love to go out rowing. I love to swim. I enjoy it. It's not like I have to do it, but I really feel better afterwards. And now we're getting these data on heat shock proteins and all these other things that can help us to do better. And
The body is just an amazing thing.
it is an amazing amazing thing, and just doing these little tweaks. And so for people, and I know all of us hit plateaus in weight loss, and so say maybe I'll just ruck a little bit and just try that a little bit and just see if that helps break you through without doing these super high intensity stuff.
Exactly,
So
and I think
awesome.
bringing that to people in a realistic fashion, like, trying to get over that all or nothing hump and just doing these small little things. Because as unsexy as it is, usually those are the things that are most sustainable long term.
For sure. I mean, anything we do, if you go, just like someone who's new to religion, they're crazy and everything. Then they go, oh, I'm done with that. I'm doing the next thing. Or I'm like doing this diet. Now I'm done with that. I'm doing this. And you go, wait a minute, you were just, and so doing something that you enjoy that's sustainable. And I was thinking about that. Well, how was it? Oh, it was Valentine's Day. My wife and I went for a hike, and it was a little bit. I didn't let her know exactly how long it was because she likes to do like a 4 mile hike, and we're on mile like 6, and she's like, "How long is this hike exactly?" I go, "We're almost there, a little bit more." But part of it's enjoying that journey. So many people just want to get to the top of the mountain instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, look at this," and enjoy your time a little bit. And so that's one of those things that's so important, like to do. I mean, what I'm getting at is some people are exercising just say, well, I have to exercise so I can lose weight, or I have to exercise so I don't get osteoporosis. Instead of saying, I enjoy what I'm doing. Like you light up talking about rucking, and I do too. I enjoy it. So you go, and it's then it's nice at the end taking that ruck off, and every time you go, oh, I can walk around faster and easier and everything.
Right, your posture's great, and I know sometimes I feel like when you start rucking, you almost join a cult. So if you like that camaraderie, I feel like that is very nice, whether it's online or in person too.
Yeah, and there's and maybe you have some information in your book, but there's rucking clubs everywhere. That's why a patient who told me about rucking, he goes, "Oh my gosh, I get together with guys at like 5 in the morning, and we go rucking through the mountains. We watch the sunrise together, and they do these different workouts." Like, well, that's pretty cool, and there's a camaraderie when you're doing something with people and like-minded. Like I always say when I'm out hiking, when I see people, like most everyone's super friendly and says hi and waves to you, and it's like doesn't matter what your political beliefs are, your religion. No one asks those things. You're just enjoying nature together. You're not divided. You kind of come together doing these things, and
Yeah,
especially
I've
when
met
people are
so
doing,
many cool people rocking. But
yeah.
Go
So
Ruck
it's
has events. So you had mentioned Go Ruck for they have gear, but then they also have like ruck clubs. You can search their website, and they have a nice spreadsheet that's organized by state and city. And then if you don't have one near you, you can do what my husband and I did and start your own.
Yeah, you could do that. Just get your neighbors involved, do whatever. And that's the other
Exactly.
things for all of us for lifestyle support. Stress management is critically important. Support and having a community, like having a good community helps you just plug along and do your thing and not get frustrated. And then, engaging with other people and doing all this. So awesome stuff. And if people want to contact you, how's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yes, I am at Kayla Girgen RD on all the things. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, KaylaGirgenRD.com. And then I just recently started my own podcast about kind of blood sugar and rucking and strength too. So Sugar and Strength podcast that
Awesome.
is more for other like rucking and real life tips too.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we'll send
Mhm.
some people your way. I mean, it's always great to be educated, and you're a great resource, and you're doing a lot of good stuff. So I appreciate your people reaching out to me.
Likewise.
I hardly
Yes.
ever take these kind of things, but I knew I'm like rucking. That'll be cool. I'm so glad we got
I'm glad we
together.
connected.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
awesome. And I'll be sending some patients your way.
Sounds good.
All right, Kayla. Have a great weekend. Thanks for
All right.
joining me.
Thank you.
And everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Go ruck a little bit. Get outside. See the sun. See the wind. Whatever. Get out there and enjoy life. And don't sit in your house all day. The sun's good for you. Getting some vitamin D naturally. All these things are important. So now that we're able to go outside again, go enjoy it. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information. And hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.